Hi, and welcome to another 5-Minute UAD tip. Today, we're going to take a look at the popular UAD SSL 4000E Channelstrip plugin. Solid-state logic consoles have been a recording studio standard since their introduction in 1979. They've been used to mix more platinum records than any other console, and their sound continues to shape hit records today. The SSL 4000E Channelstrip collection blurs the line between analog and digital, with the most authentic plugin model of this console's channel strip to date. To get started, let's take a look at the user interface. First of all, the SSL 4000E plugin is Unison enabled, so when you're recording, be sure to insert it into the dedicated Unison slot at the top of Apollo console microphone channel strips. When placed in the Unison slot, it takes over Apollo's built-in mic preamps and physically changes their input impedance and gain staging, giving you the same characteristics as the original SSL hardware. With the transformer button in, you have the option of using a Jensen transformer input for a bold, assertive sound, or you can remove the transformer for a linear tone without the bass bump. For line inputs or mixing, use the plugin as a channel insert in the console or your DAW. When it's an insert, you can still use the mic preamp on line-level sources, which gives you tons of tonal and saturation options. The Dynamics section offers both a compressor and expander gate. The VCA-based compressor can easily go from transparent to slamming and features auto makeup gain, and the flexible expander gate gives you 3 options to clean up or add chop to almost any source. The plugin features both the Type E black knob and brown knob 4-band EQ and filters. The brown EQ is fairly broad and musical, while the black is more surgical and clean. Both offer the iconic SSL band interactions and can be positioned pre or post dynamics or in the dynamic sidechain for colorful compression effects. Lastly, the channel fader adjusts the level of the output VCA, which is a large part of the tone, whereas the output control is a clean cutter boost designed to give you precise control over your record level with no coloration added to the signal. Let's do some mixing now and run through some examples. There's nothing like the SSL on drums, so let's go there first. Let's start by cleaning up the kick. Next, we'll slam the snare for a classic rock sound. On the overheads, we'll start with Ryan Hewitt's Drum Overheads preset and add some cut filters. And here's the whole drum kit, before and after. Using the mic input and transformer adds some nice saturation to the bass. Next, we'll compress and boost the top end on the background vocals and really make them shine.
Shot to the head, two to the chest. Second best. Shot to the head, two to the chest. Second best. Shot to the head, two to the chest. Don't wanna be that.
Now let's bring in the rest of the band and hear all the process tracks at once, before and after. As There's a familiar pop sound that only the SSL 4000E can bring to music. And now you can bring that legendary sound to your own tracks with the SSL 4000E Channelstrip collection, only from Universal Audio.
Shot to the head, to the chest, you know I wanna be there. Second best on
The SSL mixing console defines the word legendary. All you need to do is look at all the history-making albums that were mixed on it, and you'll understand why. A luxury once reserved for high-end studios, the big-budget SSL sound became available to everyone when Waves introduced its SSL 4000 collection. The Waves SSL plugins have become a rite of passage for many, and a status symbol that you've arrived as a mixer and a music maker. I'm here with my good buddy, Mike Fratis, the product manager of the SSL 4000 collection, to find out a little more about how these plugins were made, what's behind the SSL sound, and why it's revered by so many. Mike, you were the product manager of the SSL 4000 collection, which was one of our very first modeling projects. Can you tell us a little bit about what that entailed as it relates to modeling?
Well, yeah, as opposed to other products, the challenge here was to understand what makes a hardware tick and how to transfer that into a plugin.
So speaking about the hardware, I want to take a look here. We've got this bad boy on the table. Can you tell us a little more about what we're looking at?
Yeah, so that's an SSL 4000 reference channel strip that SSL sent us when we started the modeling project. This test jig gives you the option to control all the routings on the channel strip and mimic as if it's connected to a whole desk. But after working a long time on modeling it and getting the compression sound right and the EQ sound right, there was still something missing there. And at a certain point, it started to be the noise, the hum of the mains, and some distortion that we didn't mimic. And at that point, we were like, well, we know it sounds weird to add noise and harmonic distortion and hum into a plugin because up until that point, everybody was trying to get rid of that.
But those are kind of the elements that make it sound analog, right?
Well, today we understand it. Back then, when we started modeling it, it wasn't on the list of the things we need to model. And once we started adding that, suddenly it was like, I wanted to reach to a point where I A-B the two and I can't tell the difference. And until you don't add those, call them artifacts, call them whatever you want, but until we didn't add them, I could always say which one is the hardware, which one is the plugin. And for me, it was a no-go. I had to reach to a point where I'm A-Bing them and I'm like, yeah, it sounds...
And now, because we worked with SSL, that means that SSL also put a stamp of approval and said, hey, you guys got it. This sounds like the console?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So when we're talking about the SSL sound, how would you describe it to someone who knows very little about sound? Can you do it in a really simplified way?
Yeah, I think I would define it as punchy and very surgical. That would be in one sentence.
By surgical?
It means that the SSL, the EQ, for example, gives you the option to get very narrow curves of the EQ where you can filter things out. It can also go to very wide curves, but still the wide curves of SSL are going to be fairly sharp compared to a Neve wide curve, for example.
Tell me a little bit about what instruments do you think shine best from the SSL?
I would definitely go for like really punchy and gated drums. That's an SSL sound.
On all the drums or kick, snare?
Kick, snare.
The drum bus?
Yeah, you can go you can go really wild with that. Try to go to the 8K on the EQ, like put it dead center, the Q dead center, 8K, bring the volume, bring the gain up. Suddenly you'll have this very familiar presence of the vocals where all the sibilances are coming out and are being emphasized, something that you'd go like, oh, I was looking for that for quite some time. And a very good place to start and trying to understand what it can do for me. Chris Lord-Alge did an amazing job for us in preparing some of his presets from the desk. And if you just go through them and you look at what he's doing, you can learn so much on how to use the desk to its max. Probably gonna do you much more if you're gonna like load his presets on all your drums. So you can look at what he's cutting out from the kick but adding to the snare, and removing from the overheads but adding to the hi-hat, and all that. It's a puzzle that he's building with frequencies and dynamics that if you understand that, it'll give you a step forward in your mixing.
And of course, there's other presets as well for many other great artists. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Tony Maserati. We have some.
Right. I think Dave Pensato has
Dave
a
Pensato,
couple
of course,
presets there.
I think that's something that I always try and look at it from the musician side of it, because that's where I'm coming from. I'm not a mixer. I'm a musician who just mixes and is trying to make my own stuff sound better. Mm-hmm. And I know that that's a lot of you guys out there are in the same position. So I think it's really important to emphasize that even when you're looking at something like this, I mean, there's a lot of controls and it's pretty daunting, but you don't have to be an expert. You could just open up the presets and just find what you're looking for, that's what I do. I especially CLA's got some great guitar amp presets, run through those, pick, that's my sound, I don't waste my time.
The beautiful thing about SSL is not about adding half a dB. SSL is about going wild. You push it to the limits. Yeah. That's where you get that sound, and it was built to be pushed to the limits and still sound great. And that's how I recommend experimenting with the SSL desk and with the SSL plugin, is just do a lot of what you think you need, just a little bit. Just try. Just if you think you need a dB, try boosting 3.
It's like buying a Porsche and keeping it at 25 miles per hour the whole time.
Like,
come on,
hit the gas. Hit the gas, let's go.
In this video, we'll look at IK's new T-Rax white channel and the new version of British channel, which has a sleek new look. Both have very similar controls, but were modeled from the EQ and dynamic sections of the channel strips of two different classic consoles from the same maker. Each has different circuitry and imparts a different sound on your tracks. Let's start by processing a drum loop with white channel. Like the mixer it's modeled from, it's got a clean sound and a wide bandwidth. The EQ has 4 bands: low, low mid, and high. Here I want to goose up the kick drum a little bit. Even though the drums are all on the same stereo track, I can bring out the kick a little more by boosting in its frequency range. And I'm going to adjust the frequency to around 160 Hertz, and then I'll turn it up some more. Now I'm going to give a little boost in the upper mid-range to give it a little crispiness. The mid-frequency sections of white channel and British channel have 3 controls: frequency, gain, and Q. The Q sets the width of the selected frequency. I'm going to boost it around 2.4 kilohertz with the Q set in the middle. Pressing the B button engages a completely separate EQ circuit, giving you more sonic options. Hear the difference in tone. White channel also has a filter section, which offers both high-pass and low-pass filters. Now I'm moving the roll-off frequency higher on the high-pass filter, which is rolling off everything below it. I probably wouldn't use it on a drum track like this except as a special effect. The low-pass filter frequency rolls off the signal above it, but I'm going to turn it off for now. Now let's go to the compressor in the dynamics section. It gives you knobs for threshold, release, and ratio. It's often cool to use a compressor to add some color to a drum track. They're not just for dynamics control. The fast attack button sets a 1 millisecond attack time, and the hard button, which I'm activating here, switches the compressor's detection circuit from RMS to peak, giving it a more pronounced effect. White channel's input control can also be used to hit the compressor harder. You can use the output control to compensate for changes in level caused by compression or by turning up the input. Let's compare the sound of the unprocessed track to the processed track. Sounds a lot better thanks to white channel. All right, now let's go over to British channel, and you notice that the controls here are mostly the same. I've got a rhythm guitar that I need to work on here. I'll start off by using the high-pass filter to roll off some of the unwanted low frequencies that just cause muddiness on a guitar. Next, I want to attenuate that buzzy high end a little, so I'm going to set the frequency of the high band around 6K and roll off a little bit, just a little. There. If I wanted to, I could also scoop the mid-range by turning down the mid-range gain control. But I'm just going to do a subtle roll-off in this case. Now I'll select the hard setting and add some compression. And I'm going to hit the input harder. Yeah, I like that. Here I've got a kick drum track from a live drum kit recording. I'm going to demonstrate the functionality of the gate expander in the dynamics section by using it to get rid of the snare leakage, which you can hear. The higher you turn the threshold, the more pronounced the gate effect. See it closing up? The range control changes how much attenuation you're getting. The release time determines how long it'll take the gate to return to its normal level. The hold control governs how long the gate stays open after the signal falls below the threshold. You want to make sure to keep it as natural sounding as possible. I've got British channel and white channel opened on the master bus of this track so I can compare their sounds. I opened them both up in the T-Rack CS plugin, which lets me have multiple T-Rax plugins at once, and it gives me meters too. At the end of the chain, I opened up a T-Rax brick wall limiter to keep the levels from going over 0 dB so I don't get any digital distortion. I gave both plugins similar settings to make the comparison easier. Here's British channel. Here's white channel. Now British channel. White channel again. And British. British channel has more of a vintage type sound, whereas white channel is more clean and open. White channel and the newly reskinned British channel. Two of the great new T-Rax processors from IKmultimedia.